Today I'm going to share some news stories with you guys from my time in Ukraine, Syria, and Iraq on my foreign volunteering trips. And over my voiceover, you're going to see some footage from Veron CSG, the last unit I was in. Their donation link will be in the description as well as their Instagram if you'd like to check them out. Now to start things off, let's talk about drones. In Iraq, a lot of drones. There's a lot of stories of them, but there was one time I was on FireWatch and my squad leader had came down the mountain and I watched the headlights get closer. And when he was about a kilometer out from me, I still couldn't hear the vehicle, but I heard one of the loudest drones I've ever heard, which means it was a really low-flying TB2 Bayraktar. It was ridiculously loud and he was clearly chasing him. I'd never heard anything like this before. So as his vehicle arrived and his engine was right in front of me, I could still hear it. So I ran to his car and I told him, hey, there's a drone following you. And at that moment, my company commander staying in the house that he had drove to, and he was pretty much a #1 target for the Turkish Air Force at that point. And he was, a couple months later, killed by a Bayraktar. So when I saw that commander run to my squad leader in the car, and I ran up to him and I said, Keshif gelika deng heaver, which means there is a very loud drone that is here. It is following us. My company commander doesn't waste any time. His eyes were wide. He was hearing this as well, which is why he was staying inside his house. So my company commander told us selflessly to run away from him. The Bayraktar is looking for him, probably. It's not for a squad leader, it's not for me, it's for him. So we did. We wanted to be a hard target. We didn't want to get them a multi-kill. We wanted to give, maybe one kill. And another story when it comes to drones and jets was in Shengal, and I've told the story before, but I want to reiterate. And this was a very close call. I was sitting inside our safe house. I was about a week out from leaving and going back to home, or I actually went to Ukraine right when the war started. But anyway, I was in this safe house. It was about 12 at night and I was with my buddy just drinking tea and chilling. And we started to hear the doors shake. They were shaking very, very violently. And we went outside. There's no wind. Okay. And then about 10 minutes later, we get a call on the radio that there is jets bombing our area. And that explains the shaking doors. So I ran upstairs and I woke up our Kurdish Haval, the Kurdish guy who was in charge of the safe house, and I told him what's up. And he didn't believe us at first. So I told him the doors were shaking. They just said it's intishar, which means it's an attack. And then at that moment, there was a bomb that was clearly audible, the first one that was audible, which means that they're not bombing the mountain, they're now bombing inside our city. And at that point, he told us, get everything you have, and we're gonna run over to a different house. We gotta get away from the safe house, which is probably marked as a target. So he put on this big coat, which I had one as well, which I also brought, but he brought an AK with him. And he put that AK underneath that big coat, which is one of the benefits of wintertime in Shengal. You can hide everything you have if you're military or not. And we went out with him and we started walking down the street for about 10 minutes towards that house where we were gonna go and take safety. So there was no tunnels in this area. We were in the middle of the city, so it was a very dangerous time. And when we were walking, I had to stop myself from going into a patrol pattern. I was trying to go in Ranger file or stagger column, but then I remembered they're gonna be watching that. They're gonna see that we're military. So I ended up just walking next to them and pretending like we're just civilians walking down the street, going for a midnight stroll when there's bombing. Anyway, we reached the house and there's a couple other Kurds there. There's 2 woman fighters as well as one guy on the radio. And we got in there and they looked pretty panicked. And we were hearing on the radio how desperate everybody was. And they were connected to the radio about 300 meters away, which was a police checkpoint from the YBS, the group I was in. And they were the first ones to get struck inside our neighborhood. One of the F-16 bombs, it was a JDAM, probably 500 pounder, nothing too big when considering jets. It destroyed it. And in our house, we had a curtain, a big window, probably 10 feet long, and a huge curtain draping down in front of it. And as soon as that bomb went off, we had some airflow from the windows. The curtains go up to the ceiling, and about 5 seconds later, we had concrete raining down on our house. And yeah, we were pretty freaked out at that point. My international friend who came with us there, he was freaking out. There's no other words to say. He was freaking out. This was our first really close bombardment. And we didn't know if it was it. We didn't know, do we chuck the radio out the window? Like, are they gonna be tracking that radio and then bomb us? Did they see us walk in there? Did they see the other people walk in there? We didn't know how big of a target we were or if they were trying to target us at that point. It was all up to God at that point. That we didn't know if they were doing pre-designated targets that they had gathered for the last 6 months or if they were just targeting targets of opportunity. We did not know. But we got our answer when they started bombing some more. We had one more round hit in the neighborhood, probably 300 meters away as well from the other direction. It did the same thing to our windows, concrete rains down. And there's a big pause. There's a big pause. We knew that there were drones in the air because the radio was saying, and we knew there was still jets. So it wasn't called off yet. 20 minutes later, about 1.5 kilometers away, our big base, which I had been to every single day, that's where our passport was being held for the last 6 months. But I had just gotten it a week ago. It was bombed to smithereens. They put a 2,000 pounder right in the middle of it. The crater was huge. It was probably 5 meters deep, and who knows how long the circumference is, but it ended up rocking our windows just like the last ones, even though it was so far away. Those 2,000 pounders are incredibly powerful. When I think about that, I think about the fabs and cabs that Russia's launching at Ukraine right now, and I had a couple that were about the same distance, and yeah, it had similar concussion waves. It was insane. So yeah, that was a close call for us. And after they hit that last target, our porcupine that we had brought there was also killed. But our commander left. Our commander and all the security detail, which I was very good friends with, they left about 10 minutes prior when they started hearing the bombs hitting closer. So they survived until he was killed a couple months later with my company commander I spoke about earlier. But yeah, that was insane. We went to bed after they said that the drones and jets were out of the area, and woke up the next morning and started gardening. Crazy. The next story I have that gives me shivers is in Iraq as well. We were going to be doing a practice raid, and I made a whole video about this, but I want to reiterate how close this was. This was not a TB2 by Rocktar. This is back in 2022, state-of-the-art AI technology on a drone. It was an Kyiv drone. So as you guys know from that video, it was following us. It was circling us for about 10 minutes, and I ended up calling off this practice raid. So my first step was everybody get underneath some bushes. Got underneath the bushes, it was still circling us. And then I told everybody, okay, let's patrol back. And we started patrolling back. And I was like, okay, let's go a little bit faster, more distance. It's still following us. Everybody just sprint into the cave, and we sprint into the cave. It was our first time dealing with this AI threat, which we were completely unprepared for. It was so new at the time, back in 2022. There was nothing like it, and yeah, that was a close call. It saw us. I don't know why it didn't decide to strike, but it didn't. And I'm alive talking about it right now. I'll be getting into the Ukraine stuff soon, but another one from Shengal, digging the tunnels. I'm sure you guys can tell from the tunnels, they are not reinforced at all. It's just tunnels in the ground. There's rocks, there's everything. So I have no idea how safe digging the tunnels was or how close I was to death, but I want you guys to try and imagine what we were going through. We were heavily sleep-deprived soldiers. We would get 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, and then we'd have about an hour and a half or 2 hours siesta, we called it. In the middle of the day, because we were in a Spanish platoon. We were running off of 5 or 6 hours of sleep for a whole month, in the month of July, in Iraq, in a desert. It was so bad, and that was part of the reason we couldn't sleep as much. We had 3-hour-long FireWatch at nighttime, combined with it being like 95 degrees at night. And we just couldn't sleep in the heat with the mosquitoes and the snakes because we were sleeping outside because the tunnels were too warm, too humid and warm. And we're digging these tunnels with machinery and bombs that we barely know anything about. My first day there, they were teaching me how to make these bombs, and it was TNT that they had grinded themselves, and it was in a big plastic container. And we'd take that, we'd get newspaper, shove it in there, and then we'd get a stick and try and shove it to be more compressed, and then we put a fuse in it, and it was ready to go. We just had to connect to electricity, and hopefully there's no charge in there, you know what I mean? We'd have to ground the wires every single time we detonated it. And yeah, the way that it worked is we would go in there into the tunnels, in this freshly dug tunnel, and the smell of TNT, I don't know if that's bad for my health, but I would guess so. But the smell was very distinct. And we first plant the bombs, about 6 of them, after drilling some holes for them. And then we detonate it, which was always a little bit sketchy. And then we give it about a 5-minute break to get most of the fumes of it out of the way. It wasn't enough, but we give it a little bit of a break. And then we get in there with wheelbarrows and do about 16 to 20 runs to there, and then 100 meters down to go and empty it outside. And to empty it outside, there's drones above, and they're watching. They don't like that we're digging tunnels. It's a very distinctual entrance to our tunnel. You can see all the rocks that we're piling out. So they know that we're digging in there. So it's very dangerous. It's dangerous to be outside. It's dangerous to be inside. It's hot as shit, and we're sleep deprived. Not a good combination. But luckily none of us got injured. But as you can imagine, a week after the work was done, half of the Kurds who helped us ended up trying to run away. They were not happy with this work. They were not happy with the conditions we were living in. And they tried to run away. They stole one of our guys' phones. They tried to do it. And I'm not saying that every Kurdish fighter is like that. I'm not saying that they did it for no reason. I'm just telling you the truth. It was absolutely miserable. And once they were caught, we were in charge of having FireWatch over their prison cell. Now let's get back to Ukraine. Staying in Kyiv at the start of the war. If you guys remember, at the start of the war, Kyiv was almost surrounded. I was going in there when it was surrounded. And as we're on the train heading to Kyiv, me and a couple buddies, I was constantly refreshing Ukraine live map, trying to see, are the Russians on the railroad? And by the time that we had crossed into Kyiv, they were about 2 kilometers away. But as you guys know from Ukraine Live Map, it's not updated. They had momentum, and they don't update it until it is evident that the Russians are there. So they were probably about 1 kilometer away from the train tracks. Anyway, when I got into Kyiv, the streets were empty. As you guys can imagine, we got to Maidan Square, and we spent the night there for a couple nights. That's where I got COVID for the first time, because I spent the entire duration of COVID in the tunnels in Shengal. We didn't have any risk of it. Nobody was coming there as tourists or anything. But I ended up getting COVID, and then my first mission I had COVID about a week later. But yeah, that was a very risky time. One of Zelensky's very famous Instagram posts where he's outside and he's touching the buildings. It's on Bankova Street. This was about 500 meters away from me. So he was 500 meters away recording his position when I was sleeping in Maidan Square. It was pretty cool, small world. And the next one I want to say is the missiles that come in Ukraine. You guys know this, either you hear it on the news or you see videos of it. Missiles come in to the major cities a lot. And I would say about every 2 weeks, we'll be woken up by missiles blown up. And these missiles aren't small. Maybe the Shaheeds are a little bit smaller, but the S-300s, the Kizans or Kazals, I forget what it's called, they're huge. And they make a large boom, they'll shake you up, and this happened about every 2 weeks or so. You're guaranteed to have some missile land and wake you up. And this happened multiple times, sometimes during day when I'm making drones, and I can't show you guys the footage of it because of OPSEC, obviously. Yeah, I mean, they happen all the time. These missiles happen, and they were pretty freaking close. There'd be times where jets are flying over. Are they friendly? Are they not? I have no idea. And going on with that, I was outside. I was outside in our backyard talking to my mom over the phone. I hadn't called her in like 2 months. And in the middle of calling her, what do we have? 2 missiles fly over. I have no idea if it was air defense or if it was a passing by missile S-300, but 2 of them passed by within 5 minutes, and I hit the deck for both of them. I'm trying to calm my mom down. I'm like, oh, it's just air defense. To this day, I still have no idea. I have no idea. I didn't hear an impact, so whatever it was, it impacted far away. There's a lot of stories when it comes to these missiles. Everybody's got a story if you've been in Ukraine for more than a month. And the next one I want to mention is at nighttime, this is when a lot of stuff happens, when I'm sleeping. When I was out in the field this last year on the front line, I was a Mavic pilot, and we were working night rotations when stuff is pretty lax. It's not too much incoming compared to daytime. So as soon as we get done with our shift at 6 a.m., we go to bed. That's when everything's acting up. So every single night we had to go to sleep when stuff is popping off, when there was a massive tank assault like I had in this operation, and we'd have to figure out how to sleep. Have you ever slept with incredible amounts of adrenaline in your system? It's not good. Your dreams are insane. You wake up to incoming mortars that are maybe not targeting you because you're not going outside and inside all the time because you're not on duty right now, you're sleeping, but stray rounds, they'll come in really close and wake you up and shake you up, and it's a nightmare. And especially for me, when I got done with eliminating or helping eliminate a couple Russians, it's very difficult to sleep. You realize just how easy it is to die in this war, and it was very difficult for me to go and sleep. That's all I want to say. The next one I want to mention from Syria. We were cleaning out the armory. It was disgusting in there. It got really humid, and a lot of the gauze and medical equipment ended up getting moldy because it wasn't in packages. Some of the training supplies. So we were cleaning it out, and then eventually our medic was wanting to get rid of some of the gauze, and he knew what he wanted to toss out, so we gave it to him. And at that point, we started the burn pit. We started burning up all the trash we had found in there. Well, about 5 minutes after I had left there, I was inside my room just kind of chilling out, and I hear a huge explosion and a bunch of dirt raining down on my steel roof. So I walk outside, I'm like, what just happened? And I could tell it wasn't incoming because there was no whoosh or there was no jets in the air. So I come outside and I see my medic, white as snow, shaking. And I'm like, oh shoot, what'd he do? Well, he had tossed one of the Tilly bombs that was mixed up with the gauze. And Tilly bombs are C4. They're packed up really, really tight with tape. It's got a fuse that you light with fire. And these Tilly bombs, they're meant to go and destroy entire houses, entire concrete houses. You toss it in there, it's kind of like a huge grenade. And this is what we're seeing in Ukraine, where they're tossing TM62s and large explosives to destroy bunkers or large buildings. This is what it is. That's what it's meant for. He had tossed it in there because it was white, and it probably had some mold on it, you know, probably from the mold that was laying on top of it, and it blew up. Luckily, nobody was there. He was away from it when it exploded, but that was a close call for him. That's for sure. And overall, I just want to end this video by saying how much these little experiences impacted me. You know, the Ukrainians that I met out there are insane. The people I trained, the people I served with, they've been going to and from the front line for years. And for the ones who didn't survive, that kind of gives you an idea of what this war is. War is just filled with casualties. It is Russians that I see on my Mavic, and it is friends that I hear that die. And you can't leave Ukraine or any of these war zones without a complete humbleness in your heart for how much these guys go through. And I'm not talking about myself. I've only been in the front line for, I don't know, 50 days in Ukraine total. Some of these guys do 50 days in 2 months. You know, I mean, people go through incredible experiences. There's a lot of close calls, stuff that people never talk about. And these are some of the stuff that I never caught on GoPro. So, hey, I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed my stories, and let me know if you guys want to hear some more. Thanks to the members as well, all the people donating to my team. Again, the link is in the description. And especially thank you to the guys buying the t-shirts. Really helps me out. So anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.